Migration brings promise and grief. We leave behind loved ones and versions of ourselves caught in time, in places we may not visit often or ever. We lose languages, traditions, ways of seeing and being, and carry home with us in fragmented memory, ancestral stories, old photographs, and our resilience to rebirth ourselves in new places. In this episode, I sit down with Narină Danielean to talk about growing up in Moldova, immigrating to New York at 17, returning to her ancestral roots, and learning to live with joy, curiosity, and humanity in Brooklyn and this complicated world. This is a conversation about migration, grandparents, grief, identity, community, and the ways love is passed from one generation to the next. Hey everyone, I'm Yamuna. Welcome to the first season of The Long Road Home, a podcast where travelers, storytellers, and culture makers I've met along my global journeys share the stories behind their paths, their roots, the roads they've traveled, and how those journeys have helped them find their way home in the world and within themselves. I'm so glad to have you here with me. Let's go! Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Long Road Home. Today, I'm joined by a woman whose story spans continents and generations. Born in Moldova and raised by the powerful influence of both her mother and grandmother, Narină Danielean immigrated to New York City with her family at 17 and began the ongoing journey of building a life between cultures. Deeply curious about people and devoted to living with openness, joy, and authenticity, she brings a thoughtful perspective on family, friendship, belonging, and what it means to create a life that feels truly your own. Welcome, Narină. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. You definitely have a very optimistic, positive lens on people.
Narină, you are honestly, for me, my sort of like positivity cheerleader. I see you online almost on the daily, walking around New York City with your camera and making these videos of just like the world around you and yourself. And you seem to have no fear whatsoever in like sharing your personal opinions and experiences, but also yourself on camera, which I admire a lot.
I'm very glad to hear that. And yeah, I'm glad it comes out that way. It is what I'm trying to share.
For listeners who don't know, yet another interview with a friend of mine that I met in an ayahuasca context. Well, Narină and I actually met on an airplane flying to Hawaii, which was kind of hilarious because obviously we didn't realize that we were both going to the same ayahuasca retreat on the Big Island and spent, I think it was a couple of weeks together. Am I right? So it is
Really?
remarkable that we've
Wow.
stayed in touch. And I'm just so glad to have you here because I want to know so much more about your story. You grew up in Moldova, which I honestly know nothing about. It's a country that I've never visited. And you lived there until you were 17 years old. And I would just love to know from your perspective what life was like in Moldova before you left for the United States.
Yeah, I was born in Eastern Europe, in Moldova, which is a very small country sandwiched between Ukraine and Romania. Moldova is really cool. It's very unique because our national language is Romanian since a while back, but we do have a different dialect than Romanian language that Romanian people speak because we were heavily influenced by Russians. So a lot of our population also speaks Russian. It's kind of like a second language. So I do believe it's a very unique place to be already. I have a lot of love for Moldova and for my people. There's a lot of value on hospitality and getting together and celebration. and just having fun. People really value that in their everyday life. That's through my lens. That's what I see. And I think growing up was amazing for me. I loved my childhood. We lived in a 5-story building that was quite large, and there were many people living in it. And we had a very big outdoor space, and we hang out outside all day together. That's all I can remember. So there's a lot of deep sense of community and your neighbors and everyone playing together. And we used to have fire and barbecue outside very often, and benches, and it always felt like you were part of the small town, and everyone knows each other, and we all just living and having fun together.
That's the kind of life that I love to live, especially now having a kid. Like, that's the way to do it. And you left when you were 17 years old. So I'm curious, did you go to any high school in the United States, or did you finish and complete your schooling in Europe before you left?
I did go to school in Moldova before I left. And in Moldova, you have the option to go after ninth grade, either to finish high school or to go to college. So I decided to go to college, and I went 1 year in college in Moldova. Afterwards, I came to New York City, and I had to go finish high school. I had to do 1 year, the senior year of high school. So literally, I arrived here in Brooklyn, and in 1 week, I was already in high school.
My God, I was like imagining that could be the case. And that to me sounds really hard because assimilating not only in a new country, but being thrown into school at like, in your teenage years, but also just like your last year of school. Was that difficult for you? And did you speak English?
I always find this question interesting because a lot of people say that when they hear about it. I don't know if I just maybe I'm overly positive about things, or I only see the things that I want to see in the long term, but I don't remember it being difficult. I remember it being a lot of fun, and I love new things. So I think that has something to do with it. I love to be in new environments. I love to be thrown into something that's wildly different than I know. And I think it was kind of like a very exploratory challenge that I enjoyed. But yeah, the English part was a little challenging, but I always asked questions and I tried my best, and I feel like people were pretty supportive also.
Well, that's really good to hear. Yeah, I just have this, maybe it's from the stereotypes of movies and things of like, big classrooms in New York and just imagining you as this girl who didn't speak the language quite well. But I'm glad to hear that it was actually a great experience and it could have to do with your personality and your positivity for sure. And I'm so curious, like, why Brooklyn? Why New York?
My dad, my stepdad, moved here to visit some friends a while ago, right before we moved. And he basically was like, I think this would be a good opportunity for all of us. I think we can have a better life here for one reason or another. And he kind of like found a way to invite us to. And me and my mom, my sister just flew into Brooklyn.
Amazing. Brooklyn and New York it's just a place I've actually never visited.
Oh, I
In
was
all
about to ask.
in all the places I've visited in the world, one of the most iconic cities is a place that I've never been. And as much as I want to visit New York and I think it would be so fascinating, I also think that it to me seems so overwhelming and big and like this big mashup of everything. Do you feel like, I guess, a sense of home in New York now after all these years?
It is, New York is definitely home for me. I spent 16 years here. So I think it's coming to a point where I always thought about it. I spent half of my life in Moldova and half of my life in New York. Now it's coming to a point where those two chapters are being balanced. And I find that significant. Um, yeah, it's for sure home. My family's here. I found a sense of belonging here, and I know how to navigate the city really well. So it just feels like this place is super familiar for me to navigate. It's definitely a lot. Every time I travel and I come back, I'm even more aware of how energetic and overwhelming can be. So honestly, I am trying to figure out where do I want to live. I don't know where to go from here, but I do feel home here, and I would love to explore other places as well. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think if you learn to navigate a place like you have, and you've obviously spent half your life there, it just becomes like the home that you know. And I know that you've been back to Moldova several times, at least I've seen through Instagram, and I saw your very, very cute grandfather who I know recently passed away. What was it like for you going back to your roots after living in the United States? Like, is there stuff that you miss about Moldova? Is there something about it that you like? I don't know. I'm so curious. Could you see yourself there again, or is that part of your, like, that chapter of your life is sort of over?
I had a very interesting experience with it. After coming here, I went back 4 years after with my mom, and then after that, I did not go back home for 9 years. So that was pretty big gap. Um, I always thought that I want to go visit, but I made other things a priority and just time kept passing until one day I felt this such a strong calling that I have to go, and I kept having dreams with my grandfather, and then I was just like I have to go, and I went in a couple of weeks from that day, and it was such an amazing experience. I reconnected with my grandfather in the childhood home that I grew up in because he was living there, and everything just felt so surreal. And I had the most beautiful week with my grandfather, who is probably one of the most inspiring men that I have met because he was just so simple and so trusting in this life and kind of positive and so trusting in God. He was just very like luminous, and we just laughed a lot and hugged and just vibed together. And yeah, he passed away 3 months after that. So I was just so,
Wow.
so grateful that I was able to have this time with him.
It sounds like you really felt the call, like the ancestral call before your grandfather passed. That's amazing that you made it back in time. And I remember that week very clearly when you were posting all your stories. And I think, as much as I love everything else that you post, that particular week you spent in Moldova was probably my favorite week because your grandfather, like you used the word luminous. He really did look very luminous and kind, and I could see your face in his face. I could see part
Mm.
of part of you there, and I just loved seeing you in another context, which it yeah, it brings up a lot for me around identity because your identity, at least the Narină that I've met, is a particular Narină, but I can only imagine growing up in another place and having a completely different cultural identity in that place. Like, did you did you feel ever like an outsider in Moldova? Did you grow up very traditionally, like the same as other girls, or do you feel like there's always been something different about you?
I feel like it's hard to answer that question very uh, certainly because you never know. I never know how other people feel, right? So it's hard to assume for me that this felt like different versus everyone else's experience. Um, for me, all I know is my experience, and I always felt like a little different, and I didn't really know why. maybe even starts with my name, which is very superficial in a way, but it's so right there in everyday life. When I was in Moldova, I never met anybody Narină. My name is Armenian originally, and my biological dad gave me that name. My dad was Armenian, and he divorced my mom when I was really young, like 3 maybe, and he also passed away when I was about 9. So I didn't spend that much time with him, but I have this strong connection with him through my name that he chose for me. And yeah, in Moldova, there was no one Narine that I ever met. So I was always different because of that already. Everyone met me and I was like, Narine, what is that? Because in Moldova, not a lot of people have very original names like in New York. In New York, so many original names. Like, I'm just another person. But in Moldova, that was very original. So I always felt like everyone's like, wow, I never heard this name. Like everyone was saying that, everyone was trying to pronounce it right. So I already felt like I have so much attention on that. So that was different. In terms of everything else, yeah, I always prioritize having fun on top of everything. So maybe that was different too.
You're
Um,
like free-spirited person even then.
yeah, like even how I was dressing, like I remember people being like, "Oh my God, you should be in America with how you dress," like people doing that when I was a kid. And I was like, "What does that mean?" Um, like you belong in New York or something. And I feel like I always had this feeling that I'm not gonna stay in Moldova. Like I always knew I'm not gonna stay there.
You had an identity like bigger than from where you were from. I'm curious as well because you said your biological father was Armenian. Is that correct?
Yes.
So have you been to Armenia or explored that? Is it very different culturally from where you grew up?
I believe is very different. I still have not been. I am unfortunately not very close with my grandparents from my dad's side, even though they reached out to me recently after many, many years and we did have a conversation, but somehow it didn't stuck. They did invite me to visit them actually, which they relocated if I'm not mistaken, they relocated in Belarus. So they were inviting me to connect with them, which would have been amazing. I think that's also where my father's grave is. So I do believe that it would be a life-changing experience to feel that part of my roots. Have not made it there yet. I hope to one day.
That sounds like an interesting ancestral pilgrimage to undertake to kind of get to know that part of your identity. But it sounds like you didn't live or know your biological father very much during your upbringing.
Yeah, I feel that we have a very strong spiritual connection, and I always feel close with him in my heart, but I don't think we spend many, many times together, especially on a consistent basis.
Right. Okay. So that could be an interesting trip for you to take in the future for sure. I know you mentioned that you were raised by your grandmother, so obviously that's your mother's mother. And that would have been in Moldova, like you were raised by her when you were there?
Yes, I'm glad you're bringing up my grandmother. I love her so much. Um, yes, my grandmother and my grandfather were living in the same house that I was living my whole time in Moldova. So essentially, it was my grandparents and my mom and my stepdad, because my stepdad married my mom when I was really young, maybe like 5, 6 years old. So he was with us, and then eventually my sister. So because my mom had me when she was 20, so very young, I feel like my grandmother took a lot of responsibilities on herself, and she obviously already raised 2 daughters, and she was just very nurturing and caring, and yeah, she was kind of this woman that kept it all together in the house, very strong and powerful and motherly. And yeah, I remember she was with me when I was really sick all night, and she was reading books. She was teaching me stories and poetry until I knew all of them by heart. She was a very big part of me becoming who I am right now.
And when did your grandmother pass away?
She passed away, I want to say maybe 7 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm sometimes really bad with time. I can't remember the year.
You were in the
But
United States when she passed, I guess.
I was in the United States. That's one of my biggest regrets in life, I would say, not going back earlier and spending more time with her.
Was your mother able to return for her passing?
I don't think my mom, I can't remember if my mom went for her passing or not. Maybe she did right after. But my mom has gone before and has spent some time with her, um, versus me that I have not gone for 9 years.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, you were in such a different stage and age of your life, I think, when you're just figuring yourself out as a young adult. And sometimes those things seem really far away and not that important until sometimes it's too late. But I
So
think
true.
a lot of intercultural kids have those experiences. But it's always been a fascination to me because I'm, with an intercultural background myself. And I know that my grandmother's passing, my mother's passing, that my mom didn't make it back in time. I think she made it back a couple of days late or something like that. And I think those types of experiences end up becoming these really deep emotional wounds, for people who experience that kind of grief and not being able to be, with your people. So have you experienced that in your family situation, or have you sort of overcome the fact that your identity and family and your experiences have been split between two different places?
Such a good observation. So well said. I definitely feel all that. And I do think it's really heartbreaking, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Um, when I went to Moldova, I remember crying in a cab and just reflecting after seeing a good friend that we were friends when I was a teenager, and he has a family and meeting his daughter. And I was thinking, could feel how there was so much that I missed by not living there. I missed my connection with my grandmother and grandparents. I missed all the friends that I had that were really close and seeing them celebrating their weddings, celebrating their kids. I missed seeing transformations of my neighbors, and I definitely missed a lot of really important things. But I also think, as I said, it's a double-edged sword. You do gain on the other side as well. So I feel like, for example, not making it to see my grandmother was definitely, I was grieving that a lot. Um, and I was beating myself up and just feeling really sad that I made other trips a priority and I didn't make the trip to see someone that I really cared about. And
Mm.
like you said, at some point you have to let go of beating yourself up or just feeling sad about it because first of all, I don't think she would want me to feel that way, and I don't want to put that pressure on us. And I also feel like the most beautiful thing I can do is learn from it and move forward with this new sense of priority, I guess, in life, and remember that. And I think that does way more than just regretting something.
Right. And because I've met you in quite a spiritual context, we were out in Hawaii drinking plant medicine together and obviously going through things collectively, but on an individual level. Do you feel that in your life and in your spiritual practice, whether that was in the past or even now, do you have any ways of connecting with your ancestors on the other side?
Yes, actually, I was just thinking about that. It's very interesting. I know for some people this might sound really out there, but this is my reality and this is true. One time I had a dream and my grandmother was in it, and then I looked at the clock and it was 12:34. Like it was one of those digital clocks that said 12:34. And I woke up then or something, and I had this strong feeling that every time I see these poor numbers, I am such in close contact with my grandmother. And I cannot tell you, I see this number in such surreal circumstances, just
Mhm.
like on such a regular basis, but it's like always makes me laugh, you know? Always makes me smile, always makes me like, yep, such
Like, hi, grandma.
validating. Yeah, exactly.
That's
So yeah,
great.
and my grandfather, every time I see a bee, I feel his energy. Like since he passed, I just have bees like knocking on my window. Uh, so so many times it happened. I just like feel his energy when I feel that.
That's cool. In Moldova, like, what are the sort of, I guess, ancestral lineage keeping rituals? Are there, holidays or times when you light candles for ancestors or feed ancestors or make altars? Is there anything like that that's still kind of alive in Moldovan culture?
Yes, there is. To be very honest, I have not been very much in practicing them. Maybe a little bit. Uh, but I kind of lost contact with it since I don't have a very strong community here that does that. And when I was in Moldova, I was kind of kid and didn't really care about those kind of things, you know.
That's fair.
Um, but yeah, there is a time of the year. There's a lot about when people die, you commemorate them after a certain amount of days, you know. You go like 40 days and then you just celebrate them and you do offerings for people. Like for example, when me and my grandfather went to my grandmother's grave, we brought, let's say, three different packages that were inside. You should have like something to eat, uh, and then you have a candle, and you have like, let's say, a cup or something, and you would give this to people, and you'll have matches or a lighter, and you give this to people, and you're like, oh, this is for the soul of this person. And you kind of like make offerings in those ways. That's very, very common. Also, there's like Easter, but there's special Easter that people commemorate the ones that are dead. And you go to the cemetery, and people are like drinking and having food and just celebrating and being together.
I like that. It's kind of like Mexico with the Day of the Dead. I love
Yeah,
how they, the cemeteries are just full of people and candles and yeah, and everybody's celebrating. It's such a beautiful way to honor our ancestors and like to be celebratory versus in grief, I think is such a nice way
I love
to, yeah,
that.
for us, the living, to feel positive about all these influences in our life that have made us who we are.
I
And
love that
so
so much. Yes.
on that point with your grandmother, I'm curious, like, do you feel there's something like an influence in you that comes from her? Are there qualities that you've inherited from her?
Yeah, I feel like I often cry about it when I feel into it, but I feel that I just so grateful for the love that she shared with me. And I think that has the biggest impact, because someone showing you real love, you know, it's the most valuable thing you can have as a human, you know? Nothing else compares to someone just loving you. And that just gives you so much as such a strong anchor, I would say, to carry with you throughout this reality. And when I reflect back, I remember, wow, she really showed me so much love and care. And that took years of her time and space. And that makes me always think about how the best thing we can give another human is time and space, because that's the most valuable thing we have, you know? And it's like, yeah, give time and space and love. And that's definitely the most valuable thing she gave me, that I still carry with me. And yeah, I think she definitely inspired me by how confident she was and caring, and with her cooking, she definitely taught me a lot about cooking, and she was cooking all the time for our entire family. So that was like a full-time job. Um, and yeah, I would say that's what jumps out. And she was definitely witchy, even though, nobody talked about it openly. But she definitely knew how to like work with herbs. And for example, I knew when my grandfather didn't come home, where he was a little late. I still don't know how this works, but my grandmother would like uh have some grains of buckwheat and would just like look through them on our kitchen table, to like kind of see like, I don't know if is everything okay or something like that. And I always
Kind of
thought
like
like,
divination.
yeah, I always thought, wow, that's so esoteric. So I definitely saw some esoteric stuff. Also, something really powerful happened. She told me that I always think about this story. She told me how she grew up after World War II in Moldova, and it was really rough. Like people did not have a lot of food to eat, and you had like soldiers come to your house and things like that. And that's how she grew up. And her parents died when she was really young, and she had an older brother, and she lived with her older brother and her older brother's partner or wife. And from what I understood that she told me is that his wife was not kind to her, and because of that her brother was also not kind to her. I don't know
Oh,
for what reason, but she felt really uncomfortable, and she one day decided that she would like to like kill herself. And she made this whole plan about how she would wait till everybody goes to sleep, and she would just have water and uh, an outlet, and like have this plan with, I think, an ironing, what do you call that, ironing board, not ironing board, but
like an iron,
iron,
like
yes.
plugging it in.
Yes, and with
Okay.
water or something. She had this whole plan. And then while she was waiting for everyone to fall asleep, she ended up like falling asleep a little bit. Not even like fully, but just kind of like relaxing into a meditative state. And in that meditative state, she saw Virgin Mary, like, I want to say petting, but I don't know if that's the right word, but like really caressing her hair and her entire body and saying, please don't do this. Like, you're meant to live so much longer. And yeah, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And that's
Whoa.
why she didn't do that. I know. And I was like, what?
Wow. It speaks so much to the burden, I think the quiet burdens that women carry, even though they seem so strong and confident and all the ways that you've described your grandmother. But I think women are so amazing because, they often manage entire households and multi-generational families and are grandparents and mothers and can somehow seem to make everything run so smoothly, even if they're carrying so much personally.
So true. I love women.
Yeah, me too. We're amazing.
Yes.
I was thinking about, my mom too with my daughter and just the endless energy and presence that she has for taking care of her. And I often feel terrible because, I'm obviously in my 40s and I'm still working on building my identity and my career and all my things. And I have so much stuff on the go. And I find that I don't have the level of presence that I want to have. And I see my mom, and it sounds like your grandma, where it's like just so much love and so much devotion and time. And it is so beautiful to have somebody that can do that for a child. Because parents often have to work and we have to do the things that we have to do at our certain generation of life. So I think it's wonderful that you grew up with that love from your grandmother. And it feels like part of who you became, like your dharma in life, because you are a really positive person and a person who I think shares love very freely with everybody. At least that's how I perceive you. So I would love to talk a little bit about about that. I kind of think of it like self-authorship, who you choose to become in your life based on, your path, your inheritance. And so I'm curious, like in your life in New York, like you called it, I think you said earlier in our conversation, like you feel like just another person in New York City. And I can totally imagine how New York is just this like gargantuan city with all of these anonymous strangers that have complex cultural backgrounds and identities and different dress senses. And do you feel that that kind of anonymity and just that other, just another person sort of thing has given you the freedom to be as expressive as you are?
I do believe that you described it well, and it is that kind of place. And yes, that feels very freeing, because you're just another person and you don't have to be the center of attention. And that feels very liberating in a way, for sure. I definitely prioritize openness and curiosity and kindness and love and just being open. So I do tend to live from that place as much as possible. And I have so many beautiful interactions with people because you are around people here a lot. You go to the grocery store, there's people, you go to, I don't know, yoga class, in the train. So I definitely feel when I anchor in that openness and curiosity inside myself and love, I have the small interactions with people could be just an eye gaze or a thank you or an embrace or a little share um, that can feel so meaningful. Human connection is so important and valuable, in my opinion. So, yeah, I definitely feel that I try to do that. Obviously, it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes you're in different states and there's only as much as you have to give. And that's when other people give you. And that's when it comes back to community. Like you said, it's so nice to have your mom holding space for your family and your kid. I do believe that we are definitely a very tribal, if you wish, nature humans. It does feel very much like we're meant to see a lot of people around us, somebody, taking the responsibility today, somebody else tomorrow, and we just like support each other. It feels very hard to be isolated or compartmentalized and just like doing it all individually on our own. It seems not very energy efficient.
Right. Yeah, and I was thinking too, because I think the world is I mean, what are the adjectives that I could describe this world with? I mean, there's so many, but I just wonder like how do you stay open-hearted in a world that can sometimes make people so cynical?
I think it's because so the way that I look at death is I do think that death would feel like this life was a dream. So it would feel like when you wake up from a dream, you're like, oh, that was a dream, but I didn't know it was a dream when I was in it, you know? So I feel very much that death would feel like that. And I do believe this life is a period in time and a journey, a dream, a story, and we don't see the bigger picture. And this is just a page or a letter, in a word in a book that's in the library, and it's just one of the libraries. So I do value the most having a good life experience, and that could mean many things for different people. For me, a good life experience is being curious, being interested in life and just having the childlike wonder, about everything. And obviously, not every day is going to be equal, but as long as I have that, most of my experience, I feel like that's kind of like the most beautiful thing that I can do or the most thing that I care about. And even though so many things are not perfect, or there's things that I would want that I don't experience, I want to stay in this soft, open heart and feel the love, because if I don't feel that, what is even else can matter more, you know?
Totally. I wonder in your life, like, have you experienced depression or other kinds of experiences than, the soft, open-hearted that you describe?
Absolutely. Um, I don't think that I have ever been in depression in a way that I'm in it for a prolonged period of time. I think it's more like I do feel deeply sad, at certain times, or deep grief, or deep pain, or sadness, or frustration, or anger. And I try to allow myself to feel those things because I think it's important to, in order to come back to balance. It's like not holding a cork under the water, it will float. So I think it's very important to just allow everything in and out, because if you don't, then you're consistently avoiding something. And if you're consistently avoiding something, it's there not passing through, you know? So you're like, okay, let me pass this through. And I've learned over time, because I didn't know how to navigate my heartbreak. I didn't know how to navigate grief, and I would resist it, and I would fight it, and I would think something is wrong, and throw a tantrum and kick. Um, and that felt very hard, and it felt like death, and it felt really bad. I understand why people have a hard time coming back, because when you're in it, it feels like there's no way out, you know? And I think it's important to just allow yourself to be in something that you do feel like there's no way out, but because there's a part of you that knows you will be out, because you have done that in the past already, you know? But
Hmm.
tiptoeing and not feeling it, it's just trying to be in control, you're trying to
Yeah,
have a certain
avoidance.
experience of life, you're judging other things. So just trying to not judge, but be present and be who this is already.
Hmm. Thank you for that. I wonder what is something that life is teaching you right now?
Life is teaching me how to let go of knowing what's best, like letting go of any versions that I think that I want, or that's what's best, or that's the scenario, and how to be equally open-hearted in the unknown, and how to look through life through a lens of what's already here, and what I'm grateful for, and what I'm blessed with, versus what is not here, and
That's
what
beautiful.
sucks. And it's
Uh-huh. I
definitely
see that.
definitely a work in progress, right? Like I fail all the time, but as long as life is definitely is teaching me now this.
You said earlier in our conversation that you're not sure if there's a next place after New York or if there's anywhere else. Do you ever think that there is going to be another place in the world that you're going to want to live, or do you feel very settled and rooted in your life in Brooklyn?
I would love to live somewhere else, and I have this feeling of how that would feel. And I've had this for a while. All I can say about it is that I know there's mountains. I can see that very clearly. Like I see mountains in the background, definitely forest, and definitely community and people. That's that's such a huge part. I just don't know where, and I don't know how.
Mm. I would imagine that like living in New York, it would give me a feeling of FOMO if I left. Like you're potentially leaving the most vibrant, dynamic city in the world where there is everything and anything going on at every minute of the day. And
Right.
I wonder if it would be hard to leave just that feeling of like, whoa, I'm going to miss out on everything.
I wonder too, and I'll let you know when that happens.
True. Because right now you're in everything, you're there.
Yeah, and also it depends what place, right? I did actually leave New York about 4 years ago because I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I went to Florida for just to check it out, and then in Jupiter, Florida. And I just randomly chose a place because of a friend that just moved there. I didn't really know much about it, but I was just like, you know what? I just need to try it. It kind of felt like when my grandfather died, I just have to do this. So I just followed that instinct and I went to check it out for a couple of months, and then I ended up moving there and I lived there for a year and a half, I believe. And yes, it was a little hard to be there because I definitely did miss that aspect of accessibility to so many things to do, and multiculturalism. I missed a lot. I missed a lot just being with different people. Um, that aspect I really, really missed. That's why eventually I came here. But if I can find a little bit of that somewhere else where there's not a lot going on and there's still nature and multiculturalism and fun and openness, sign me up because I'm
Maybe
packing my bags.
Canada. There's some mountains. Well, I feel the same way you do just because I've been living, on a mountain, but in a very remote situation without community. And Mexico is wonderful, but it's not multicultural the way that Canada is. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about being in Canada is the multiculturalism and the feeling of like, eating food from any country in the world and meeting people from every country of the world every day. It is really exciting to be in such a big dynamic melting pot. So I think we at least have that in common right now. But I also love the mountains so much, and I hope for you that you find that place in the world where you get the community and the mountains, because I think the community aspect is so important.
When I met you, you were such a free spirit. I mean, I'm sure you still are, but you were like traveling everywhere, going to different places, doing different ceremonies, just like going through life with such an adventure and willingness and courage to just experience different cultures and different circumstances and adventures. That, yeah, I can imagine that this is such a different experience.
It is, and it's so rewarding, and it's also so hard to give up former identities, and there's definitely a lot of grief that comes with motherhood and the loss of a particular kind of freedom that I think I got very used to. And even though that's just kind of part of parenting and part of the change of life, the circle of life, if you want to call it, it's still hard to give up, my own selfish desires and my own needs, and putting other people's needs, in an equal sort of footing as mine. So it's a practice. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is that, my daughter gets the life and the education and the sense of home and love. And, I think like you with your grandmother, you've taken away all of that love, and that's what you remember despite anything else that was in the picture. And so I hope that's also the same with her. She just remembers, no matter where she lived and where she was, that there was so much love in her life.
I think that's beautiful. I love that.
Thank
And I love
you.
how you're allowing yourself to feel all the things as well, and not boxing yourself in, oh, this is bad or you should be a different way. I think it's inspiring
Exactly.
to I think it's inspiring to hear that.
I do want to end on, my last and final question, because we're coming kind of to the top of the hour. But um, I just wanted to know if there's anything that we haven't covered, or if there's anything that you would just like to tell listeners.
Okay. What feels alive right now is that human connection and places to connect with others in an authentic, heart open, seeing each other, even if you have differences, loving spaces is not an option. And it is such an essential part of a rich life experience. And I hope that each one finds those pockets in their life, whether it is events or going to a local yoga class, or afterwards you can be together and chat about life, or going to women's circles, or gathering your friends around the fire. Um, I just have this strong desire to help create those spaces for people. And I hope that I find my way to weave that into this reality. But yeah, I just really hope that everyone finds that for themselves in whatever capacity, and know that they're not alone in their experiences, and they don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to be a book or a certain way. We're all unique. There's no instruction manual, and you can just create it however you see fit the best, and fail on the way, because that's okay.
I love that. And I love that your message is really about being human and being okay with being human and not having to be perfect. I see that come through in your work a lot. And I will definitely link your Instagram to folks if they want to see your stories and come along with you for the journey. Thank you for sharing your story and for taking us into the landscapes of, family, migration, curiosity, and belonging. It's been such a pleasure to have you here, Narină. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Yamuna. This was such a beautiful adventure to communicate and go through this circles of life with you. And I hope that we stay in touch, and who knows, maybe we get to hang out in real life soon at some point.
Okay, you're going to be my Brooklyn crash pad.
Let's go.
Let's go. You've been listening to The Long Road Home, a podcast for travelers, storytellers, and culture makers exploring the roots that shape us and the roads that lead us home. I'm Yamuna. See you on the road.